gotten the opportunity to watch the film for North Texas. It's frustrating in a lot of areas because we continue to make so many of the same mistakes, it seems, week after week. And here, as we sit in Game 7 and keep talking about turnovers and big plays and third down and red zone productivity, I think we've got to look first at ourselves as a staff, and we have got to do a better job with this football team, especially in those 4 areas, because those have been the 4 areas that it seems like week in and week out has continually hurt us. It seems like it's so many of the same things. It's just a different game week to week, and we've got to do a better job as a staff, and we've got to hold ourselves accountable to what we're trying to do and how we're trying to build this. And so I think when you look at the game, there were a lot of positive things that you can build on, but the major negative thing are some of those weaknesses I talked about. And the bottom line is trying to find a way to win a football game. That's why they keep score, and what we've got to do a better job of is giving our players an opportunity and holding them to a certain standard and making sure that we're getting done what we got to get done in order to win. But that's what we've got to do. We've got to find a way to win a football game. I talked about some of the positives in this football game. I mean, I really, when I look back, I'm really proud of what we did from a special team standpoint. I think Ronnie Bradford has done a great job with the special teams. I think there's a group of guys in there that are becoming better known as the Dirty Dozen that we're working with, that are doing an absolutely fantastic job covering kickoffs, covering punts, protecting the punter, and what they have to do right now on special teams. And they're not the guys that are the everyday names. When you start talking about guys like Bryson Abraham and Ahmad Wallace and Blake Martin, just going through a handful of them: Kentrell Bryce, C.J. Cleveland, Josh Cuthbert, the deep snapper, Bo and Lyle Feet, doing some things, playing a minimal role, but doing a great job for us. When you look at Mike Schrang, I think Josh Ross is becoming a big part of that with the way that he's playing right now. Connor Nichols, Jabari Pruitt are all guys that have really been playing well for us in our Dirty Dozen. And when you look at the challenges that they've had the last 2 weeks in covering kickoffs, in 2 weeks in a row they faced a top 10 kick returner and punt returner. And what they did Saturday from a punt return standpoint, they averaged -4 yards, and they held them way below their averages. I think what we've done on a special teams, from a special team standpoint, really with very average kicking, I think they're really to be commended. I think they've done a great job on special teams, and there are a lot of positive things that we have to continue to build on. We'll be challenged again this week, but I really like the progress that our special teams is making and some of the development. From an offensive standpoint, I know he's sitting in here in this room today, but I can't say enough about the way Ryan Higgins is competing. What he's doing out there, we have got to do a better job of protecting him as a redshirt freshman to throw the ball 55 times. I think we're asking an awful lot of a young quarterback, but I couldn't be more proud of the way that he has stood in there and the way that he has competed and some of the things that he's doing and the way that he is maturing as a quarterback and coming along. And also saying that, I think there's a couple throws that he would love to have back. But when you throw the ball 55 times, there's going to be a couple of those, and we've just got to make sure that we can continue to look at the film, correct some of the mistakes, and move on. But really think that he's doing a great job of developing as a young quarterback. I think from an offensive line standpoint, I talked about we've got to do a better job with our protection. And I think in the second half we made some adjustments that gave those guys a much better job, a much better opportunity to protect Ryan and stand in the pocket and do some of the things that we did. But our offensive line is not playing with the consistency that we have to have. I think some guys turned in some outstanding performances. I thought Mitchell Bell played very well. I thought Matt Shepard at guard played very well. And I even think Trey Carter is doing some really good things at the left guard position as a junior college player. But as a unit, we're not as consistent as we need to be, and we've got to continue to develop that. Another frustration in this game was the inability to run the ball up inside. I talked about North Texas's defensive front. I think they're better than I thought they were going in, although I had great respect for them coming in, and I thought they did an excellent job with their game plan of trying to stop the inside running game and trying to force us to throw the ball and get the ball on the perimeter a little bit more. But Kenneth Dixon is just a total team player. I like the way he's playing. I like the way he's running. I like a lot of the things that he's doing right now at the running back position. At the wide receiver position, I'll say the same thing. We're far too inconsistent. The outside receivers, we had 9 catches and 4 drops, which is way too many. And trying to ask a young quarterback to throw the ball on an inexperienced line, we've got to make sure that we've got to do a better job of being able to make some plays in the perimeter. When you talk about your outside plays, those are so many of those plays that are getting a little bit farther down the field. And I think we've got to do a better job with our outside receivers. And Hunter Lee and Andrew Gilliott continue to be, Greenwald continue to be really solid inside and play really good football games for us. And Trent Taylor continues to develop as an inside receiver, and I think he's going to have a very bright future here. What we've got to do as an offensive staff is we've got to do a better job of putting the pieces to the puzzle together. Just right now, so we can, what we've got to do to develop some consistency and be able to move the ball, because we have not had the productivity. We may have the productivity in yards, but we're not putting the productivity in points. And a big part of that is our lack of execution in the red zone. We had a turnover in the red zone. We missed a field goal down in the red zone. Those are opportunities that we can't miss as a football team, especially in a close football game. Talking about the defense, the staples up front continue to play well. Ellis, IK, Dora really doing some good things up front. I think Daniel Cobb played one of his better games of the year, even though he wasn't the leading tackler. I think he's really doing a better job of playing in the system. And I thought Bo Feet starting to get more and more work at the linebacker position, and he's a young guy as a sophomore that's really coming on that I think is showing some very positive signs. Thomas McDonald played his best game of the year along with Xavier Woods. We moved those guys around a little bit, jockeyed them around at the free and the strong and the Sam, and I thought those two, Thomas McDonald and Xavier Woods, played an excellent football game. I think they're getting better and better. I think you look at Levander Liggins and Darius Barnes. I thought for 67 of the 68 plays, they played great football games as corners that were put on an island a little bit. But unfortunately, for the 137-yard gain that went down to the 1, and for the long pass that went right before the halftime, we weren't able to overcome those things. But I think there's some guys that are playing some good individual efforts. But as the team, it's not where it needs to be. And I don't think our energy was what it needs to be in the second half of a close football game. I don't think we handled the adversity very well of the 3 plays that happened in the final, I think it was about 3 minutes of the first half, with the big play, the touchdown return, and the missed field goal. I don't think we handled that very well at halftime. Again, I think myself as a head coach, I've got to do a better job with this team, and we've got to do a better job as a staff of finding ways to put them in a position to win football games. This week, getting into FIU, we've got a great challenge this week, especially coming off a difficult loss where we continue to make some of the same mistakes over and over that we've got to eliminate in a short week. We're playing a team that scored 24 points the last 2 weeks in a row. I don't think you can look at the full season of work. I think you have to look at the progress that they have made, especially the last couple weeks. On the road, they played early. A number of people with them playing Louisville, Maryland, and Central Florida have proven to be some pretty good football teams that they lost to early. But I think they are getting better and better as the year's gone on. And the last 2 weeks, I've really been impressed with what they're doing as a football team. I think defensively, it starts with their first-team all-conference defensive lineman. He plays end, he plays tackle, 3 techniques, shade. They'll put him on both sides. I think he's a very talented player. Number 8, Hickman. I've really been impressed with him. I think he's the best football player on the field when their defense is out on the field. And he is one thing they've proven, that regardless of who they play, they can rush a passer. That's one thing that they have been able to do, and constantly put pressure on the quarterback, which has not really been our strong point going into this game to this point, but something that we've got to get corrected and we've got to get evaluated this week, and what we need to do to give our players a better opportunity to protect our quarterback. They're offensively, they've got a returning starter at quarterback. They're running the ball better. They've got their tailback is rushing for about 90 yards a game at this point. They're, like I said, they're getting better. They're putting points up on the board. They've scored 24 points in each of the last 2 weeks. And again, for a 3rd week in a row, they've got a couple very dangerous return men. When you look at them from a return standpoint, I know with Miller, their punt returner is doing a great job, and their young talented kick returner has also got a lot of shake and a lot of wiggle, and he's gonna be a guy that's going to challenge our Dirty Dozen and what they got to do in special teams. But it's a week that we are looking forward to, as we say as a football team all the time. There's no self-pity in football. As much as you want to sit down and lick your wounds and evaluate what we did, positive and negative, we've got to get some things corrected, and we've got to move on. It's time to roll your sleeves up and get competitive, and we got to get ready to go because we have another football game this week. What questions could I answer for anybody?
How can you mentioned that about their pass rush, so how can you simulate that in practice and prepare for the speed of their team in their pass rush?
You know, I don't know that anybody puts a better pass rush on us every single day than what we do going good against good. Having the opportunity to go against IKN and Pollard, Justin Ellis, Vernon Butler, Doris, Shaquille Lucas, those guys up front, I think we see it every single day. I think it's a thing that we just really have to evaluate what we're asking some of our players to do at this point. And it's not what we do and drawing lines up on the board, but it's what we can do to go out there and execute and protect our quarterback and give him an opportunity to throw the ball. And I think we've got to do a better job of that this week.
Coach, you talk about that offensive line. Larry Banks is a guy that started some games at left tackle for the previous staff. Left tackle's a spot that y'all have had some struggles. Has there been any discussion of maybe trying Larry out at left tackle to see if maybe he's got a hot hand?
Right, well, we put Larry was out there in the spring, and we ended up moving him into guard because we felt like it was better suited for him. You know, and him and Trey Carter have been battling out at the guard position. You know, we've talked about a number of different changes, just as we did in the secondary a week ago with some of the problems we were having giving up the big plays. Whether that, you've got to look at your personnel, which is what you're talking about, and some of the changes you're going to make with your personnel, and you've got to look at what you're doing schematically. We had to look at and evaluate what we were doing schematically to give up the big plays defensively last week and try and see if we could minimize those and cut those down. I think we're in that same evaluation, both with talent and with scheme and what we're going to do with our offensive front. But it's something that has been talked about with the possibility of a Larry Banks. You've got two guys in Graffrey and Mitchell Bell, both at the right tackle, that have been playing a lot. You've got a young guy in Darryl Brown that I think is going to be one of the future tackles on this football team, along with Yen Danielson. So we've got a couple guys in that mix right now that we're evaluating and what we're going to do schematically and from a personnel standpoint. But there will be some moves this week on the offensive line, and that we can't sit status quo and continue with the inconsistencies that we have right now.
And then on the same note, you got a quarterback in Ryan Higgins that can run the ball, maybe move in the pocket, some zone blocking. Could that be something people see going down the road?
Well, we've tried to utilize his legs a little bit more, Ryan, with his legs and some of the zone read things and what we were doing, and I think that's been a nice little wrinkle in what we've done as an offense. We've tried to move them a little bit with some of the play action, if we can get them to understand that you're in play action to throw the ball in the flat. I think if we can understand that a little bit more, that we're moving the pocket to be able to get completions, then it's something that we can do more of. But it's something that we've got to look at all that. We've got to look at schematically, moving the pocket, protecting them better in the pocket with what we're doing, being able to maximum protect and get the ball farther down the field. These are all things that we've talked about, as well as some of the personnel issues. But we've gone at it hard here for the last 24 hours and what we have to do to solve some of the problems that we have with our passing game.
And how do you address the drops at outside receiver? These guys have played receiver for a long time, but yet they continuously have drops. How do you address that?
Well, 4 drops with 9 catches is way too many, and we've just got to continue to stress it and emphasize it. I think there's the 5 guys outside that we're working with. I think they're the right 5 when you talk about Sterling and Eddie and Jakari and Richie Casey and DeCluitt. I think when you look at it, everybody had 1, and that's what we've got. The 1 is not. The standard can't be accepted. I mean, because if everybody has 1, you have 5 outside, you have 5 inside. If every offensive lineman only misses 2 blocks in pass protection, there's 10 times your quarterback's getting hit or sacked. We've just got to eliminate some of that inconsistency. And all we can do right now, there's not a lot of personnel things that we can do because those are the guys that are playing. But we got to continue to work with them, and we've got to take the guy that's doing the best job this week in practice of securing the ball and giving us the opportunity to make a play down the field.
What kind of lesson can we learn from a game like you guys just played, where you come out hot and have the hot hand, take the 2-possession lead, and then it snowballs, and the next thing you know, you're down
I think there's a great lesson to learn from the way we handled the adversity. And, so many people talk about momentum in a football game, and momentum is real. It happens, and it goes up. Momentum goes in kind of highs and lows during the course of a football game. But what we've got to be able to do is when it's at its low point, you've got to have the mindset that momentum's always coming our way. We got to go out and make a play. We got to go out, create a turnover, get a sack, make a big play on special teams, create a big first down or flip the field. You've got to do something to get the momentum to come your way. It doesn't just happen. And I think that was the thing that I was alluding to when I said I don't think we handled the adversity very well and came out the second half and made a lot of things happen. We've got an expression that all I need is a crumb. I mean, just give me a crumb and I'll get the rest of it from there. And that's something that I don't think we had that attitude when adversity went against us a little bit. As I said, that's on me as a head coach. I've got to do a better job of motivating them to get them to continue to plug in some fight. And I certainly don't want to say there are guys on this team that rolled up their sleeves because I thought there's some players that competed all the way to the end incredibly hard. But as a team and as a unit, we didn't make a lot of things happen in the second half when that momentum was going against us, and that's what great teams do. There's a lot of great teams that come from behind or have to overcome some adversity somewhere along the way, and that's one of the things about playing on the road. When you go on the road and you're all you have, you've got to be able to fight through some of the momentum swings during the course of a football game. And I don't think we did a very good job of that, but it's something that we addressed, something that we talked about, and it's something that we've got to continue to get better at.
Can you address some of the similarities you guys have with FIU with some of the off-season changes in terms of conference and the number of seniors you guys lost?
Well, I know they're playing a lot of young players. They're in the same boat. I think when you look at it, the quarterback's about the only one that's returning from them off last year's team. I know that they've got a lot of young players. They've been through some growing pains just as we have. I know as a new coaching staff coming in, they've got talent on that football team. They have a lot of talent. You can see them getting better and better every week. And that's why I said when you watch them against UAB and Southern Miss, I've really been impressed with what they've put together. And I think they've done a nice job there. They're building it just as we are here. They're going through some of their growing pains and they're improving every week. And hopefully we can make the strides that we need to make this week to be able to go down there and win a football game against what I consider to be a very talented team, but just a very young football team, which is in the same boat that we're in.
In terms of the red zone productivity, other than eliminating, like the obvious eliminating turnovers,
Right.
like how do you as a coach them, prepare them to finish those drives?
Well, I think the two things that when you look at the red zone for us, it's been the number of field goals that we've missed in the red zone and the number of turnovers that we've had in the red zone. Now, offensively, that's certainly not to pass a buck because offensively you'd like to score touchdowns, which I think we're only doing at 57% of our trips in the red zone rather than having that upwards of 75. And I think we've got to be able to do a better job of running the football. We've got to practice it more, although we've spent quite a bit of time in the red zone and doing 2-minute drills where you're passing the ball just in the final 30 yards where the field's going to shrink. And we've done an awful lot of red zone game planning where you're putting what you're trying to put together, but we've got to do a better job of executing it. And I'm saying we, as a staff, of putting it in, getting our players to buy in, understand it, and be able to go out and execute it on game day. Because it's not about what you call, it's about being able to execute what you call. But the red zone woes are definitely an issue for us right now, and I don't think you can put your finger on one thing and say it's just the running game or just the passing game or the missed field goals or the turnovers. I think it's a combination of all of it. But regardless, when you score 50% of the time in the red zone, you're not going to be very productive. And that's where we've got to do a better job. And you're down there 4 times and you turn it over and you miss a field goal, you can't come away in a close football game without points when you're down there.
Being halfway through the season, if you've had some missed field goals, I imagine at this point you have decided just to stick with Kyle Fisher and to leave the red shirt on Jonathan Barnes?
We have. It's a thing where we've evaluated as we've gone through the season, week in and week out, and they compete every week. They kick their handful of kicks on Tuesday, Wednesday, and have the opportunity to compete. And I just don't think the numbers have been lopsided enough for me to merit taking the red shirt off Jonathan Barnes. I think Jonathan Barnes is going to be an excellent kicker. I think he's going to have a bright future here. Right now, there's just been a heck of a competition, and Right now, we're going with Kyle, and Kyle's going to have to do a better job, and he understands it's his job right now and the obligation that he has. But it's a momentum killer on the last play of the half when you've got a football team that drives all the way down the field and then gets to the 5-yard line and has to kick the field goal, and you can't make it.
You look at your team overall. Are you where you thought you'd be this far into the season, halfway through?
In some positions, we're better than I thought we'd be, and in some positions, we're not as productive as I thought we would be. And I can't say that across the board for all 5 linemen. I look at the growth of Trey Carter and Mitchell Bell, 2 junior college players that came in here late that weren't here for spring practice, and the way that they've grown and the way they've matured and the way that they're playing. We knew what Matt Shepard was and the way that he's doing. I think it's probably more just the consistency. I look at Kano a week ago, plays one of the best football games as a center he's played all year. And then this week doesn't follow that up with the same type of consistency. And I think that's probably been my frustration, is that what we can get one week, we've got to be able to expect to be able to get it again the next week and continue to make that growth. But we have not caught the ball as well as I would like to on the offense. We have not protected the passer with the consistency that I would like to. And we have not been able to run the ball with the consistency that we need to in order to be a really good offensive football team. There is a glaring lack of big plays for points at this point with us as an offense. And I think when you look at our productivity as an offense and our points, they don't match up. You know, where we rank in this conference in total offense and where we rank in points is on different ends of the spectrum. And I think that's where not having some of those big plays for points and not being able to create a lot of turnovers as a defense has created some of where we are right now and what we have. And I think we've got to evaluate our problems, and we've got to be able to get better as we get into this weekend. Defensively, our D-line has been, I think, outstanding as we've gone through the course of this season. I love the growth of the linebackers, and I love the growth of a lot of new faces in the secondary and the way that Xavier Woods, what he's brought to the table. You look at Adarius Barnes and where he was week 1 and where he is in week 7, and it's 2 totally different players. I just think there have been a lot of positives on this team, and we're making a lot of strides in a lot of areas. We're just not making them as quick enough as we need to in order to get some wins on the board. And that's what we as coaches have to evaluate who's doing it and what we're doing to do a better job, because we have not done a good enough job to this point.
Couple more.
When you
mentioned Xavier Woods, talk a little bit about what he's brought, especially as a freshman and being a local guy.
Football player. I mean, he is a football player. And I think, as soon as I say this, you talk about Xavier Woods and Trent Taylor, 2 guys that have stepped in as true freshmen. They're committed. They've got the conviction that it takes to be great players. They're confident in themselves. They work at it. They're talented. They're tough. They're physically and mentally tough. I think they're what you would describe as good football players. We talked with our football team about what are the intangible things that great football players possess. I think you could walk those 2 up here and they fit the bill, so many of those intangible things. And I think if you've got a lot of guys like Xavier Woods, you're going to win a lot of football games. But I can't say enough positive things about him and Trent Taylor and what they've done as true freshmen, stepping into the situations and making themselves not only good football players, but some of the better football players on our team from an offensive and defensive standpoint. You look at the productivity that Trent Taylor's had as a freshman. It's not just in the numbers. I believe he only has 17 catches at this point, I think is what he has. I don't know, maybe it's not that high. But you look at his 4th down catch at UTEP that keeps the scoring drive alive. Look at some of the yards after catch he's had the last couple of weeks. He's a guy that as this season goes on, you're going to see him play a bigger and bigger role.
Coach, on tape, watching the North Texas game, I'm sure y'all again saw the safeties were so wide for North Texas. Do y'all wish you would have used the middle of the field a little bit more than you did?
Yeah, I do. I do wish we would have attacked it a little bit more, but at the same point in time, you got to be able to protect your quarterback to throw the ball down the middle of the field. And if you look at what we did in the second half, We did a much better job of protecting them, but you're kind of limited with where you can throw the ball. We had a couple plays down the middle of the field that unfortunately we weren't able to get off in the first half. I thought Ryan did a good job of scanning the field, using his eyes, hitting his back foot, and then trying to get the ball down the middle of the field. Neither ball got there because of the pressure that we received up front. So we kind of went away from it, but when you go back and watch the film, yeah, I'd like to get the ball down the middle of the field, and I'd like to get it farther down the field where we have an opportunity to attack it. But those are some of the schematical things that we have to look at, is how do we do a better job utilizing the entire field, not just from the middle and the outside quadrants, but also what we're doing from the line of scrimmage to 40 yards downfield.
All right, thank you.